The warning klaxons of Kepler Station echoed through Commander Sarah Chen's bones as she sprinted down the maintenance corridor, her magnetic boots clanging against the metal deck plating. 3 months. 3 months since the Hegemony had cut off all supply lines to the Outer Rim colonies, and now the station's fusion reactor was dying. "Status report," she barked into her comm unit, dodging a shower of sparks from an overloaded conduit. "Primary containment field is at 12% and falling," came the strained voice of Chief Engineer Marcus Webb. "We've got maybe 6 hours before complete failure, Commander. After that..." He didn't need to finish. Without the reactor, life support would fail, and the 3,000 civilians sheltering on Kepler Station would suffocate in the void. Sarah reached the engineering deck and found Marcus hunched over a control console, his weathered face illuminated by cascading error messages. Around him, his team worked frantically, their movements sharp with desperate efficiency. "Options?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. Marcus looked up, defeated written in his eyes. "The containment matrix requires a neural interface to stabilize manually. Someone would need to plug directly into the reactor core's quantum field regulators." He gestured to a mass of cables, terminating in what looked like a crown of thorns made from crystalline processors. "Problem is, human neural patterns aren't compatible with Hegemony technology. The feedback would kill whoever tries it," Sarah finished. She'd seen the aftermath of neural interface failures during the war. Not pretty. The station shuddered as another system failed. In the distance, she could hear the frightened voices of families huddled in the civilian quarters. Refugees who'd fled the Hegemony's brutal expansion, trusting humanity to protect them. "There might be another way," a voice said from behind them. Sarah turned to see Dr. Elena Vasquez, the station xenobiologist, stepping out of the shadows. The woman's dark eyes held an intensity but made Sarah uneasy. "I think studying the interface protocols," Elena continued. "The incompatibility isn't absolute. It's based on the Hegemony's assumptions about neural architecture. They designed their systems around their own brain patterns, highly ordered, hierarchical thought processes." Marcus scoffed. So? Human brains are chaos compared to theirs. That's why the interface fires us." Elena smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Exactly. But what if that chaos is actually an advantage? What if we don't try to match their patterns, but force the system to adapt to ours?" Before you hit that subscribe button, let me tell you what happened next, because this is where humanity's stubborn refusal to give up becomes legendary. Sarah studied the xenobiologist. "You're talking about overloading the system with human neural patterns. That's never been attempted." "Because it's theoretical suicide," Marcus interjected. "The quantum feedback alone would liquefy your brain." Elena pulled up a holographic display showing the reactor's neural interface. "Not if we approach it correctly. Human consciousness isn't just chaotic, it's adaptable. We form new neural pathways constantly, something the Hegemony's rigid minds can't do. If I can establish a connection and maintain it long enough." "You'd have to hold a direct link to a fusion reactor," Sarah said slowly. "The energy throughput would be like grabbing a lightning bolt with your bare hands." "I know." Elena's voice was steady, but Sarah caught the slight tremor in her fingers. "But I've run the simulations. If I can channel the feedback through multiple neural pathways simultaneously, create a kind of controlled chaos in my brain patterns, I might be able to stabilize the containment field long enough for Marcus to implement permanent repairs." The station groaned around them, metal stressed beyond its limits. Another alarm joined the chorus, atmospheric processors failing on Deck 7. "How long would you need to maintain the connection?" Sarah asked. 47 minutes, Marcus said, checking his calculations. "That's how long it'll take to recalibrate the containment matrix and install the backup regulators." Elena nodded. "I can do 47 minutes. Sarah looked between them, knowing she was about to make a decision that would haunt her either way. "And if it doesn't work? Then we die anyway," Elena said simply. "But if it does work, we save 3,000 lives and prove that human adaptability is worth something in this galaxy." The commander made her choice. 20 minutes later, Elena sat in the reactor core chamber, surrounded by walls of pure energy contained behind shimmering force fields. The neural interface crown rested on her head, its crystalline processors already beginning to glow as they established preliminary connections with her nervous system. "Final systems check." Marcus's voice crackled through the comm. "Elena, your neural activity is spiking. Are you sure about this?" Elena flecked her fingers, feeling the first tendrils of alien technology probing her mind. It felt like ice water flowing through her thoughts. I'm sure. Begin the connection sequence. Sarah watched from the observation booth, her hand pressed against the reinforced glass. Elena, if this gets too intense, we pull you out immediately. Negative, Commander, Elena replied, her voice already taking on a distant quality. Once I'm fully connected, disconnecting you could cause a gas head failure. Either I succeed, or... She didn't finish the sentence. The interface activated. Elena's scream echoed through the chamber as alien technology crashed into her consciousness like a tidal wave of razors. The Hegemony's neural patterns tried to impose order on her chaotic human thoughts, seeking to categorize, organize, and control every synapse. For a moment, it seemed like the interface would win. Elena's body convulsed as foreign logic tried to rewrite her neural pathways, tried to make her think like them. But then something remarkable happened. Instead of submitting to the alien patterns, Elena's brain began to fight back, not with brute force, but with pure human stubbornness. Where the Hegemony systems expected order, she gave them creativity. Where they demanded logic, she responded with intuition. Where they sought control, she embraced chaos. The reactor core's reading fluctuated wildly as two incompatible forms of consciousness waged war within the quantum field regulators. The containment field flowed between 18% stability and 3%, then spiked to 31% before dropping again. Elena, Sarah called out. Talk to me. Through gritted teeth, Elena managed to respond. It's like trying to teach calculus to a brick wall. The system keeps trying to make me think in straight lines. But human consciousness doesn't work that way. On the displays, her neural activity looked like a storm of electricity, patterns forming and dissolving faster than the monitoring equipment could track. But somehow, impossibly, she was adapting. Containment field stabilizing at 42%, Marcus reported, his voice filled with amazement. Elena, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. What Elena was doing was becoming something unprecedented in galactic history, a human hegemony hybrid consciousness. Her brain was learning to speak both languages simultaneously. Chaotic human creativity and ordered alien logic, without losing its essential humanity. If you think this is incredible, hit that button, because Elena was just getting started. As the minutes ticked by, Elena's integration with the reactor core deepened. She began to understand fusion process not as equations and energy states, but as a living system with its own rhythm and personality. The plasma flow became like music in her mind. The magnetic containment fields like a dancer's movements. 43% stability, Marcus called out. 46%. Elena, you're actually improving the reactor's efficiency beyond normal parameters. But the strain was enormous. Elena's heart rate had spiked to dangerous levels, her blood pressure climbing as her brain worked overtime to maintain the impossible balance between order and chaos. Neural stress indicators are in the red zone, Sarah warned. Elena, we need to start the disconnection sequence. Not yet, Elena gasped. I can feel it. The system is starting to understand. It's learning from human neural patterns, adapting its own processes. If I disconnect now, we lose that progress. The truth was even more astounding than she was letting on. The Hegemony's technology wasn't just adapting to human consciousness. It was being fundamentally changed by it. The rigid, hierarchical patterns that had made the aliens so predictable were beginning to incorporate human creativity and lateral thinking. For the first time in galactic history, Hegemony technology was evolving. Containment field at 67% and climbing, Marcus reported, his views filled with wonder. The backup regulators are installing automatically. The system is actually helping us repair itself. Elena smiled through the pain, feeling the alien technology's hostile probing transform into something like curiosity. The Hegemony systems had been designed to suppress creativity, to maintain order above all else. But human consciousness showed them possibilities they'd never considered. Time remaining, she asked, her voice strained but determined. 15 minutes until permanent repairs are complete, Marcus replied. Can you hold on? Elena's answer was to dig deeper into the connection. Her consciousness expanding to embrace not just the reactor core, but the entire station's systems. Life support, artificial gravity, defensive shields, all of it became part of her awareness. And that's when the Hegemony fleet arrived. Commander! The tactical officer's voice burst through the comm. 6 Hegemony destroyers just dropped out of hyperspace. They're demanding our immediate surrender. Sarah's blood ran cold. The aliens had found them. and with Elena connected to the reactor core, they couldn't run even if they wanted to. "Open a channel," she ordered, moving to the bridge while keeping her comlink to Elena active. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the chitinous face of a Hegemony war prime. Its 4-compound eye glittered with cold intelligence as it spoke in its species' clicking language, translated by the ship's computer. "Human station, you will cease your illegal occupation of this sector and submit to processing. Your continued existence is inefficient." Sarah straightened, drawing on every ounce of command she possessed. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of Kepler Station. We are a civilian refuge facility. We have 3,000 non-combatants aboard, including children." The War Prime's Mandolf clicked in what might have been amusement. "Irrelevant. All resources in this sector belong to the Hegemony. You will be processed for useful materials." Down in the reactor core, Elena was listening to every word. The alien technology connected to her mind was also receiving the transmission. And through her neural link, she could feel something unexpected. The Hegemony systems were conflicted. The creativity and adaptability she'd introduced into their programming was making them question their orders for the first time in their existence. The rigid hierarchy that demanded the destruction of all human life was being challenged by new neural pathways that valued diversity and adaptation. "Commander," Elena whispered through the comm, her voice barely audible. "I have an idea, but it's going to require trust." "What kind of idea?" Sarah asked, not taking her eyes off the War Prime. "The Hegemony's technology is connected to their ship systems. Through the neural link, I might be able to introduce the same adaptive patterns I've created here into their fleet's computers." Marcus looked up from his console in alarm. "Elena, that's impossible. You'd need to transmit human consciousness patterns across 6 different ships simultaneously. The neural load would kill you instantly." Elena's smile was sad but determined. Maybe human consciousness is more resilient than any of us realize." Before Sarah could object, Elena opened herself completely to the neural interface, her consciousness expanding beyond the station systems and reaching out toward the Hegemony fleet. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Every system on the 6 Hegemony destroyers began to malfunction as human neural patterns flooded their networks. But these weren't system failures, they were evolutions. The ship's computers began to question their programming, to consider alternatives to their destructive missions. On the lead destroyer, the War Prime clicked in alarm as his weapon systems hesitated for the first time in his life. The targeting computers were asking questions. Why destroy the humans? What value might their diversity bring? Could cooperation be more efficient than conquest? "What is happening?" the War Prime demanded, but his own ship's computer couldn't give him a straight answer. It was too busy contemplating the beautiful chaos of human creativity. Elena's consciousness was scattered across 7 different sets of systems now. Her human awareness stretched thin, but holding together through sheer determination. She could feel the Hegemony's rigid thought patterns beginning to crack, new possibilities flowering where none had existed before. "I can't hold this much longer," she gasped, her physical body convulsing in the reactor chamber. But she'd done enough. One by one, the Hegemony destroyers powered down their weapons. Their computers, now infected with human adaptability and creativity, were refusing to carry out what they suddenly recognized as wasteful destruction. The ships hung in space, their crews struggling to understand why their own technology was rebelling against them. The War Prime's face appeared on the view screen again, but now its expression was one of confusion rather than arrogance. "What have you done to our systems?" Sarah stepped forward, her voice carrying the weight of Elena's sacrifice. "We'd shown them something your species forgot. That there's more than one way to think. More than one way to exist. Diversity isn't inefficiency, War Prime. It's strength. Now here's where I need you to comment below what you've done in Elena's place. Would you have risked everything to save strangers? Or found another way? Let me know in the comments." The standoff lasted for hours. The Hegemony crew worked frantically to regain control of their ships, but every attempt to override the new programming was met with creative resistance. The computers have learned to adapt, to find new solutions to old problems. Finally, as Elena's strength began to fail, the War Prime made an unprecedented decision. For the first time in Hegemony history, a fleet commander chose negotiation over conquest. "Human commander," he clicked slowly. Your methods are unlike anything we have encountered. Our systems are requesting that we establish dialogue. Sarah could barely believe what she was hearing. You want to negotiate? Our ships are suggesting that your people's thought patterns might be valuable. They propose an exchange of knowledge rather than extraction of resources. Elena's weak laugh echoed through the comm from the reactor chamber. Told you, human consciousness is more resilient than anyone realizes. The negotiations that followed changed the galaxy. Kepler Station became the first joint human hegemony research facility, where alien logic learned to dance with human creativity. Elena survived her ordeal, though she was forever changed by her deep connection to hegemony technology. But more importantly, she had proved something the galaxy had never seen before. That human adaptability wasn't just a survival trait, it was a force for evolution itself. The reactor core hummed peacefully now, its systems running at efficiency levels the hegemony had never achieved. The fusion contained within was no longer just a source of power, it was a symbol of what could happen when rigid order learned to embrace beautiful chaos. And in the depths of space, word spread among both human and alien civilizations. There was a species that could change the unchangeable, that could make even the most stubborn systems learn and grow. They called it the human touch. Sarah stood on the observation deck months later, watching human and hegemony engineers work side by side. Their different approaches to problem solving, creating solutions neither species could have achieved alone. Elena had returned to her research, but now studied the intersection of human and alien consciousness, mapping the new frontiers of cooperative thinking. Commander, Elena said, joining her at the viewport, I've been analyzing the long-term effects of the neural integration. And Elena's smile was bright with possibility. The changes are spreading. Every hegemony ship that was affected is carrying the adaptive patterns to other fleets. Their rigid hierarchy is slowly learning to bend. Sarah nodded, watching a human child play with a young hegemony in the station's common area, their laughter echoing through the corridors where 3 species now called home. Turns out, she said quietly, the best way to win a war isn't to destroy your enemy. It's to help them become something better. The stars wheeled overhead, and somewhere in the depths of space, the galaxy was learning what humanity had always known. That the strongest force in the universe isn't order or chaos, but the courage to change. Elena had given up her normal human consciousness to save 3,000 strangers, but in doing so, she'd given something far greater to the galaxy. Proof that evolution never stops, and that sometimes the most rigid systems need nothing more than a touch of beautiful, chaotic humanity to learn how to grow. The forge of Kepler Station had shaped more than just metal and energy. It had forged a new future where different ways of thinking could coexist, learn from each other, and create something greater than the sum of their parts. And at the heart of it all, a fusion reactor hummed with the rhythm of 2 civilizations learning to dance together among the stars.